know almost everybody here. As you know, I am not a scientist. I am not a researcher. I am a lifelong investigative reporter, which counts as, I suppose, half of a researcher.
I learned a bunch about soil and about what some other cities had taken a closer look at, not just the trees that they decided to save, like Sacramento made a big, huge push to save all their trees. San Francisco passed a new tax to save all their trees. And it was that the soil is filled with stuff that nobody really understands. The roots, the microbes, there's all kinds of stuff in the soil. And we got interested in, you never think about the soil. I mean, it's good for runoff to have some soil. We want to capture it and keep it on the land instead of losing it all, and all of those usual things that we say. But there's this whole life, this whole reality below us that we don't really understand. So we took a look, we got interested in wetlands just as, because we love the Ballona-Wetlands. And I wrote about the Ballona-Wetlands back during the Citizens United to Save All of the Ballona-Wetlands in the late 90s and early 2000s when Spielberg was going to build a studio on the property. And so I go way, way back on this whole battle over the wetlands. I'll tell you a quick side story before I get into my presentation. I wrote a story. I was an investigative reporter and columnist for a paper that doesn't exist anymore called New Times LA. And, oh, that's right. And the headline chosen by my editors to explain what Spielberg was up to was Dream Jerks. And so he asked me to take a look at the artwork that was going to go on this cover, this 5,000-word takedown of Geffen and Katzenberg and Spielberg for this horrible plan. And it was just a complete takedown. It's one of my favorite stories that I've ever investigated in my life. I had an insider in Spielberg's office who was feeding me information. Anyway, not only did they have dream jerks, and I thought, God, who's responsible if the editors are even wilder and crazier than the reporter? A painting, actually, a beautiful painting of the wetlands with some cattails and different things. And they had E.T., and E.T. was standing up like this with his finger kind of just, stop or whatever, please. And a bulldozer was coming towards E.T., and it was being driven by Steven Spielberg. Walking down the hall in City Hall about 3 months ago, and an aide, whose name I will not give, an aide to a major city council player, came up to me and he said, I always wanted to tell you about how much I admired you in the fact that you had a deep throat in the Spielberg camp. And I said, I never told anybody I had an insider in the Spielberg camp, so that means you are my insider in the Spielberg. And he says, well, because they abandoned the project about 6 weeks after our most vicious attack on it. And we took credit, even though they said it was financial. We took credit right and left. Everywhere we went, we took credit for stopping it. He says, you know what? The day after the main story ran with E.T. on the front, he came into the staff meeting, he slammed your story down on the table and he said, I'm out. It's amazing to me, and I've read through, not all, and I know some of you have, but a big chunk of the state's environmental reports. And the way they pass over what's going to happen when they disrupt the soil and how little they understand about the soil and the stuff in the soil, the mystery inside the soil, you almost can't exaggerate how ignorant the report is and how little effort the state put into this. And I can show you really quickly because I only spent about 3 hours on the internet. I already knew kind of where to go some places one day to get ready for this talk. And at the very top, you'll see some links. The bottom line is, let me start with this gal at the very, very top here, Susannah-Tringe. The first time she appears in information about wetlands and the soils and the microbes and everything that's in there is maybe 10 to 15 years ago when she's quite young. This picture of her, I think she's at Stanford at the time. And she's going to start studying the mud flats and wetlands of the Bay Area. And they study them, and they study them, and they study them. And one of the things they begin to realize is we have no idea what all these critters and little microbes and viruses, and it's just teeming with stuff and we actually do not know what it does. We don't know its purpose. We don't understand how it operates with the rest of the world. You might as well be on the moon trying to figure out what's going on there in the crust. It's a complete alien world for us, and there's very little, just in the last, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, more and more in-depth looks at how do we even quantify it? How do we dig down and like take cores? Or it's incredible. So they do know a few things. One thing they know is that well, first of all, if you look at I love things that are called the really snappy title, Microbiomes Podcast. The very bottom thing in boldface there. But I watched it anyway. I watched this podcast. It was fascinating. And there she pops up again. It's 2019. And Susannah-Tringe, all these years later, used to be at Stanford, is now at the Joint Genome Institute. And they're still trying to figure out what's in the wetlands. How do they work? And what do they do for us? And there's two kinds of wetlands. There's the kind that create methane because of the stuff that's in the clay, and then there's the kind that eat the methane and are huge sinks that hang on to all of the bad things we don't want in the environment. They're sinks and they hold on to that stuff, and they keep it for decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years. So when you go in and you disrupt something, and you don't know really why you're doing it, and you don't know the outcome, it really goes beyond, to me, beyond the role of the government. They have really no right to take this step right now because they are unbelievably ignorant, and they're not alone. It's just that we're all ignorant, and they are sort of pretending in a way that they have some clue. And I think I can assure you, and if you read through some of these links, you'll see what I'm talking about. So one of the things that they say during this podcast, and I have it in boldface, one problem is that human genes are pretty well known, but microbiomes, we have lots and lots of genetic code. We don't have a good handle on it. Some estimate that 80% of those pieces in microbiomes in the soil, we don't know what they do. Whole bunch of dark matter that is relatively unknown. We look at it and don't know what it is. These are top researchers working on it for 10, 15 years. It's a mystery on our own planet. A guy named Jason says, I'd say it's very exciting, the potential of the data. The things we don't know, we're working on a panel on the viral sequences in the soil. Viral sequences, because they infect bacteria, and we can ID them, but we have like zero idea what's going on and why the viruses are there. This gal Susannah weighs in and says the main motivation is identifying ways that we can help shift the greenhouse gas balance in the atmosphere, and wetlands are well-known carbon sinks. But they can also create methane. Like I was telling you, there's 2 types of wetlands, and there might be more. The question is, when is that the case? Well, it's not understood. They don't know. They're not sure. Okay? Again and again, every time you pull up a story, the only people who are sure are sort of the journalists and the politicians. But everyone else, the real serious scientists are just, wow, we better stay away from this thing. So she goes on to say, each wetland is different. There's a lot of wetlands restoration going on right now, usually aimed at improving habitat, water quality, or flood control, not usually toward carbon sequestration. These projects have a potential to be carbon sinks, but only if we really know how to make them sinks and not sources of carbon. And that's the guts of it. They don't know. If you go in and you renovate and refresh and change a wetland, are you making it into a sink that holds carbon or a negative? Don't know. Not in the EIR, by the way. Not in the state of California, which this year has a budget, by the way, of $222 billion. Record high budget. When I covered the Arnold era as a journalist, they were about to reach $100 billion, and everybody was going crazy because it was as much as like the top 12th country in the world or something. Now we have $222 billion, and they can't hire some of these completely untainted people to weigh in and explain how little they know in their EIRs. It's just, to me, it's, I don't know, LA Times, where are you? Where are the journalists? Because there's so little coverage anymore about serious stuff like this. I have more friends who are former journalists by probably a factor of 10 than I have who are still in journalism because of the massive layoffs. The Sierra Club becomes even more important as a voice because the media really are dying out. They do a lot of stuff about battles in Washington, but to cover what's really going on out in the world, you see less and less and less. Official data allows an estimate of the scale of the contrast if you bulldoze. Little more than 2 years of land clearing will effectively cancel out what the public is spending to avoid 125 million tons of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. This is on a project in Australia. That's projects, I should say, in Australia. The equivalent to what has been planted over several years in the 20 million trees program is wiped out in just 6 months of land clearing in Australia. I noticed that The Guardian in London has done a pledge to cover the environment. They pledged to cover the environment more aggressively, and they had a lot of very interesting stories about wetlands in The Guardian. I was very surprised by that. Australian scientists launched a project to bury tens of thousands of tea bags in wetlands around the world. They're going to test the tea bags. The project from Deakin University, I guess that's Australia, called the Blue Carbon Lab. Peter McCready says the wetlands are important for carbon capture and storage across the process known as sequestration, and they hold up to 50 times as much carbon by area as the rainforest. Pretty incredible. So a fast decay of the tea inside the bag means that more carbon is being released into the atmosphere. Slower decay of the tea inside the bag means the soil is holding on to the carbon. So they're trying to figure out which wetlands hang on to the carbon and which ones don't. I know it was getting underway in about 2017 or 2018, and they're going to monitor at intervals of a 3-year period, dug up at intervals of 3 months, 6 months, and each year after that to keep checking. And anybody who wants to can contact the Blue Carbon Lab and find out if you can participate with a wetland near you, and they will send you a kit. So I don't know if this is over with or not, but wouldn't that be cool if it's not done with, and you guys could get the BALLONA-WETLANDS involved? Possibly, right? Yeah.
Well, so there's some wetlands that absorb methane and some that produce it.
Yes.
I bet you there's not that many wetlands that have had methane forced under them for 78 years.
I knew someone was going to bring that up.
and I mean, if they were talking about methane not going into the environment, maybe they would stop all the leaks.
These studies where they've replaced fresh water with salt water and it's beneficial because
I haven't heard of any, but I haven't looked that far. No, you're right. I have not seen anything that says, oh, hey, this is a great idea. Most of it is, really, really bad news, but I haven't looked that deeply into it. I've just looked at some news coverage and a couple of kind of simple papers that I could understand. But no, it's hard to find something that promotes the idea. What I know is that restored wetlands are not as good as the original. They did a meta-analysis of 600 wetland sites. So they learned a lot about the whole worldwide picture. And I thought it was interesting that the site, it's got a lot of published papers on it. It's called dirt.asla.org. I don't know. The researchers concluded that either the recovery times are very slow or there's some sort of additional disturbances going on that happen to the wetlands from pollution or development. In other words, they don't know what happens once you mess with the wetland and it starts basically underserving us in society. We need the wetlands. They're not sure what the mechanics of it is. All they know is they come out worse. They don't do as well. And whether it's 100 years old or a few decades old. Interesting comment from David Moreno-Mateos. He's a wetland ecologist at the Jasper Ridge Biological Reserve at Stanford University. But I think the Sierra Club should get to know these people. He's the lead author of the paper. He told the New York Times Green Blog that changing the way restored wetlands are evaluated and testing the biological processes is needed. And he said, and this is a quote, in traditional restoration, people repair the hydrology In other words, how the water is moving. They put in some plants. Does this sound familiar to anybody? And after a few years, they say the wetlands are good. But if you look at what's really going on down there, you see the processes are not recovering. So it gets back to all the hidden, invisible reality below our feet. When you look at it, it's not restoring. It might be pretty, it might have a cool sign for people to show their kids, but underneath it all, something bad is unfolding. And you can see how generic they talk, because they're still stumbling along trying to understand. But he said, this Maria Mateos said that over the past 20 years, the US, Canada, and Mexico spent $70 billion restoring more than 7 million acres of wetlands. In some cases, they're restoring what was being used for agriculture, different things. That developers often, quote, promise to create or restore wetlands in one location in exchange for getting permission to bulldoze wetlands in another location. The research is saying that the new sites just don't do as well. I did not find any studies that said, oh, it's way better when you restore a wetland. I did not. I mean, not on the scientific carbon sequestration, greenhouse gases level. I did not find anything. Carbon sequestration in soil, the opportunities and challenges, and they took a closer look. And they said that globally, the soil contains a large carbon pool, 1,500 gigatons of organic carbon in the first 1 meter of the soil, in the first 1 meter. And think how deep the soil goes. I mean, it's incredible. And it's twice as much as atmospheric CO2. So the wetlands are holding far more in the body of the wetlands than is in the atmosphere. It's like a bank filled with money that we shouldn't take out, right? Just leave it in the bank. So by holding this huge carbon stock, the soil is preventing carbon dioxide buildup in our atmosphere here on Earth. It's literally like our safety blanket. I can't decide if I'm more disgusted or shocked at the state of California, Heal the Bay, and all the other groups who seem to think this is a fine idea. Is it ego? Is it money? Is it, I mean, it's one or the other, right? They're convinced they know what they're talking about. They get funding from all kinds of people. That would be the money. Both are terrible, terrible reasons to move forward on a plan that will remake the wetlands. For those of you who saw it in 1999 when the battle was super engaged, and the huge group that was created, I've met so many people who are my friends today during that first year or two. It's hard to imagine that after all of this work and effort, and then you go out and you see how much more beautiful Bayona is now, because Steve Soboroff wasn't allowed to build past the main road and had to keep his condos on the other side. When I go to Sacramento, I'm amazed actually that the Coastal Act was approved and that California is not covered in high-rise buildings like Miami Beach. Yes. It's a miracle, really. When you think, it's incredible. The pictures that I saw here 3 months ago in the presentation, beautiful, incredible pictures. Now famous photographer of the Bayona-Wetlands. Honestly, some of the pictures look to me like Costa Rica, or I couldn't even believe how beautiful. And the cars can't see the wetlands because of all the shrubs and different reasons. They're lower down in some places, and you just can't see the wetlands. And we don't want the public to overrun them either, but it would be nice if there were a really popular drone, like a super viral drone of what's there. It's something to show the public what the state's about to sacrifice. Legislators are, how out of touch they are, how little time they have to read the bills they're voting on. Some of them are smart, but a lot of people, if you meet them, you would be amazed at how misinformed and how they don't care. So when I look back at that movement to make the Coastal Act, it's
It's incredible. What it tells me, though, is that there's always hope, because how all that came together is a book unto itself. And we're still getting the incredible payoffs from the Coastal Act, even though it's under attack every single year by right now by Governor Newsom, but certainly by Scott Wiener and almost all of the Bay Area legislators who are in his camp are just, they're so sick of the Coastal Act, they're so sick of CEQA, they're so sick of all these things standing in the way of having a Manhattan, which they love. It's really hard to reason with them and talk to them about, do you know what this would look like and what it would be like, and how overrun and how non-environmental it would be if the Coastal Act hadn't saved all of this? I have my theme tonight is, it comes down to two things. There's ego, which is, you know a lot of elected leaders. Some are perfectly nice people. I'm very, very partial to Dick Reardon, and I love some people way on the left, and I have a whole family. So we're up against a lot, but the good news is that the Sierra Club has groups all over California. I belong to the Valley Sierra Club. There are all kinds of groups who meet on weekends who are not Sierra Club, but other kinds of groups who write letters and fly to Sacramento and are deeply involved. There's a lot of ways to network now that we didn't have in 1999. I'm teaching a class right now at Chapman University on investigative reporting, and I had all the students put their hand up and say the number of social media friends they had and which social media. And I did an audit. We added up what was our reach. What was our reach through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I can't remember the fourth one we chose. So we added it all up, and in this class of 19 students in little town in Orange County, we have 25,000 people we can reach out to.
Thanks to Jill Stewart for her presentation on wetlands. After listening to her talk on soil and subsoil systems and how great freshwater wetlands are for carbon sequestration, and after seeing beautiful images of the Ballona wetlands, we need to get on to protecting, preserving, and saving the wetland systems in the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve. We have to bring back groundwater into the wetlands. We have to restore freshwater flow, and we have to clean up and build a toxic-free Ballona. This is going to take a fight that's worth fighting. Please, we need your help. Attend meetings, write letters, and call your politicians. Support restoring freshwater to the Ballona wetlands.